Hello, everyone. Welcome back to the show. This is the Voices of Healing podcast, and I'm Tina Clark, your host. And I have a wonderful guest today with me, Jane Barlow. She is a master herbalist, and she is an author of a beautiful book she sent to me in the mail called Be Your Own Shaman, a field guide to utilize 94 of the world's most healing plants. Well, I'm really excited to start talking about this because herbal healing and natural healing, I get very excited about. It's one of the reasons why I started this podcast in the first place. So thank you, Jane, for being on the show.
Yeah, thank you, Tina. It's always fun to share, not just with like-minded people, but to share with people who this might be new to. So, yeah.
Exactly. So we're trying to spread good information and helpful information to people out there that are looking for solutions and alternative healing modalities. And well, herbal healing has been around for thousands and thousands of years. This is not new.
No, this is not new. In fact, it makes me smile when people feel like it's new, and it not in a negative way, but it's such deep wisdom. This is how humans have been taking care of ourselves since the beginning. And really what is new is our modern medicine model, 150 years at the most. So what really people should look at as alternative is what's going on in our modern medicine right now. So yes, it's been around for millennia.
And we don't have to go back that far. I mean, our grandparents and our great grandparents were probably using herbal remedies and had home remedies that have been forgotten.
Yeah. Yeah. And I think what's interesting is if people really realize, especially people in the West, realize that the majority of the human beings that live on this planet still turn to herbal medicine and natural remedies first. It's the majority. So we're actually in the minority, those of us who take care of our health using modern medicine, prescription drugs, and all of the stuff. So yes, we're actually in the minority. So it's time for the rest of us to move over into the natural realm because it's powerful, and it's not just some woo-woo thing that your grandma has a remedy for. This is powerful medicine, and this fills me with so much excitement because I grew up with natural medicine, and now I'm watching it make this huge resurgence, which is so beautiful.
It's about time, right?
Yes. Yes.
Like I'm so ready for it. I feel like I've been, twiddling my fingers and chomping at the bit a little bit, like, come on, come on, come on, come on.
Yeah. Well, I
Yeah.
think the little thing that happened in 2020 kind of pushed the needle toward that edge. And, for all the angst and all the turmoil that has caused even since, to me, that was a good thing that came out of it. Is a lot of people kind of screeched in their tracks and were like, wait a minute, something's off here, or maybe I'm not taking as good care of my health, and we really can't count on modern medicine to come and save us. We have to take responsibility for that ourselves, and then just tune into the wisdom of our body's ability to heal when it gets the right tools. There's deep wisdom there.
Right. And
Yeah.
that, it was a very stressful time. It was
Yeah.
kind of a crazy time. We were all stuck at home, told not to go anywhere. Don't go see your family. I mean, it just seems crazy to to talk about it now, but I think it was a big wake-up call for everybody, and certainly for me. And I've been in holistic wellness for a long time, but as it was an even bigger wake-up call for me. So
Yeah.
tell the audience a little bit about you and your background and your father, who also was a master herbalist.
Yeah, so I grew up in the 60s and 70s, and my dad was he was an herbalist. He actually he was a degree, so he got his PhD in medicinal botany. So he was the really super scientific as far as what made him tick was, what are the Latin names? What are the common names? What are the leaf structures and the flower petals? And, you know, he was just, what made him geek out was what makes plants turn into medicine for human beings. And he had a particular love of Native American plants. So when I was 4, I'm one of 14 kids. First of all, I'm second oldest. And when I was 4, my parents adopted 3 Native American kids that were 4, 3, and 2. And they were siblings as well. So they were adopted very young and they were part of our family. But there's a whole story behind that. But my dad has always had a love of Native American plants and just plants in general, and what are the medicinal properties that make them anti-inflammatory, good for your immune system, good for pain, good for diabetes, good for blood sugar, good for digestion. There was just this thirsty knowledge that he had. And once that got opened, when he was pretty young when that happened, but this was what my childhood was all about. It was like identifying roadside weeds and what time of day to collect them and what parts of the plant do you use and where do they grow. And, you know, this was just normal for us. We didn't, you know, we realized when we would go into school that not everybody got this, not everybody. And, you know, when I was a teenager, I was pretty embarrassed about it just because teenagers are always embarrassed about what their parents are doing. But yeah, I mean, I come by it really honestly. My dad passed away almost 27 years ago, and his business, he started formulating all these herbal remedies that he sold to practitioners throughout his life. And then after he passed away, his business kind of died with him, because none of us we didn't have schooling in herbal medicine. We just had knowledge. We just had experience from little kids growing up with this. So 4 years after he passed away, I restarted his company, and I've now been going for 23 years on my own. And it was a wild, amazing childhood. It's fun to talk about and fun to reminisce about. And we wish he could have stayed around longer. He was only 62, which is a year younger than I am now when he passed away. So yeah.
So you grew up, you know, with this father who had all this knowledge about plants, and how has that changed your life? I mean, how do you use plants now? Like, if you get a symptom or start getting a cold, what do you do?
Yeah, I mean, what an unbelievable gift, right? So my kids are in their 40s and I have grandkids now. So what I've been able to do is, since I was a child, I've always had these remedies at the ready, like especially my dad's formulation. So some of my favorite things for cold and flu, which to me is super simple, you know, like I've never even had a flu shot. I just don't, I know what to do for any time. And that's a whole nother conversation. But things like elderberry, lemon balm, echinacea, osha root and lobelia and mullein are really good for your lungs. So if I get something that might settle in my lungs, I really have a special love for a plant called lomatium, which is a Native American plant. It's in my book as well. Not a lot of people are familiar with it, but I have a whole kind of plethora of remedies that I use if I get a cold or the flu. And same with when I was raising my kids, it would be like, okay, I'm just going to reach for this tincture of lomatium or osha root, and I knew, you know, kids a certain age, you know, maybe under 3 can't use this plant, and then it would depend as I would walk through life, even up through now, you know, going through menopause. Then I really adopted a lot of adaptogens. You know, adaptogens made a huge difference for me as I went through menopause. So, you know, to me, it's just having this knowledge and the practical use, because I think that's what happens is people that maybe, you know, I know most people didn't get the growing up that I did, but people that start to learn about these things, it can be a little bit overwhelming to go, you know, where do I start? And then what I find the biggest thing is people need to have the courage to use it, to trust it, that it's going to do the job. Because it's like, well, what if I my kid has an ear infection and I hear that this plant's going to go after that ear infection, but they're not sure. So there's courage, there's trust, and then there's you need to start using it. So to me, it's just been a lifetime of, oh, I have fever, I'm going to take this. Like, feverfew is perfect for fevers. So things like that, just along my life path, the things that I've needed.
Yeah, I dabble in it myself. I've made my own elderberry syrup. I've made my own cough syrup.
Yeah,
And I have all these tinctures, and I don't always use them, but when something comes up, I grab my book and look it up and try it. So I'm one of those people who are not afraid to try things.
You know what? And I think everyone just needs to, that's great. That's where everyone needs to be, because it does take a certain amount of bravery, right? When you're first using it.
I'm more afraid of taking a medication.
Me too. That's so good. I totally agree.
I'm very suspicious, and I'm like, what is this? And what are you prescribing me? And I'm terrible. Like, I won't take it if I don't think it works. Well, I'll just quit it. I know they say you're not supposed to do that, but if it's not working, it's not working.
Right.
Yeah.
And I'm afraid of the side effects of different medications. You just kind of have to go, where's the critical thinking and the common sense that people will just, take something that has this long list of side effects. And here's what I find interesting. I've had people that have kind of found me and what I do over the years, and they'll be on a whole list of prescription drugs that they didn't even question, but they're kind of at a point where they would like to get off of them. And then I'll say, well, for inflammation and pain, here's something really super easy to start with, like turmeric. And then what happens, they'll turn into these deep researches, and they'll be like, well, okay, wait a minute. I need to make sure and do some research before I take turmeric. And it's like, you will take this list of prescription drugs with all these nasty side effects without researching it, but then you turn into a researcher when someone suggests turmeric. And not everyone's like that, but I do find that it's an interesting change in mindset when you switch to natural remedies.
Yeah, we could get into the whole history of that. I know what the history of it is, but
I know.
But what we're really trying to do is encourage people to try these things. And there's so many books out there, and there are people who have studied this and are experts in it, like yourself, like Jane and her father too, just learning from her father and his legacy. So, it's not just a very casual thing. This is decades and decades of knowledge, right?
Yeah.
And I don't really believe in stacking up certificates and saying I'm an expert in something. I more feel like, what experience do you have in this,
Yeah.
And I think experience is extremely valuable. I mean, there's a big difference between going to a Reiki practitioner that's worked on hundreds of people and going to a Reiki practitioner that's worked on 30 people.
Yeah. And granted, the person who's worked on 30 needs to get their experience somewhere, but there is something, especially with something like herbal medicine, where this is wisdom that typically for generations have been passed down. Think about an indigenous people in really anywhere. There's a medicine man or a medicine woman, and they typically pass it on to other people, sometimes their own sons and daughters, and it goes generation to generation. And there's deep decades and hundreds of years worth of wisdom that, yes, I would trust that over somebody who went and got a piece of paper from a degree from a college and then had no experience.
Me too.
I would rather have the deep wisdom of that. So yeah.
So there's some herbs that you can take are there any herbs you can recommend for anti-aging?
Well, I get asked that all the time, which is really fascinating. I think things like super greens, like spirulina is one of my favorites for anti-aging, just because it's got all your B vitamins, your complete amino acids. It's good for skin health. It's good It's high in protein. You know, I love to add a scoop of spirulina powder to a smoothie, or, you know, in the winter I don't do smoothies, so I will do capsules of spirulina. So yeah, you know, burdock is really good for skin health, which helps with anti-aging. But from my perspective, I believe that the best way to anti-age is lifestyle. You know, exercise every day, reduce your stress, drink lots of water, eat as clean and close to nature as you can, and keep your body mass lean, because those, you know, all of those lifestyle things are anti-aging. You can't cover up bad lifestyle habits with a bunch of herbs. You just, you know, you just can't. So there are some things that help with aging, but I think your lifestyle factors are going to be a lot more important than trying to add in a bunch of herbs that have anti-aging properties.
Yeah,
So
and I know people are tired of hearing this, but diet is basically your foundation
yes,
for everything.
yes, I agree.
Yeah, and I guess there's so much confusion about diets and this diet and that diet and forget the diets, just look at the whole foods and the vegetables and the fruits. Focus on that.
Mm. Well, and I don't think it's one diet fits all. You know, I know people who thrive eating clean meat, and people who thrive on a vegetarian or vegan diet. And don't think it's about judgment. I think it's about every person, and not just what fits their body, but there are traditions in life, you know, like cultures that have special dishes. When you have food that's homemade with love, whether or not it's a meat dish or a vegetarian dish, there's going to be differences. So your sourcing of where you get your raw ingredients to make your meal is a lot more important than judging someone because they eat meat, or someone because they won't eat meat. Like, to me, it's we all have to come together with our differences, and then just get good, clean sourcing. And that, to me, that's what it's about.
Yeah. So if you're a beginner and don't know where to begin with herbal medicine, how does one start?
You know, there's two places that I always suggest people start. The first one is in your own spice cupboard. So if you look at the spices that you have, you know, people might have like basil and rosemary and thyme and turmeric and cinnamon and cloves and all these kinds of things. So this is really powerful medicine, but here's a little bit of a caveat with that. Most of the spices that people have in their spice cabinet have already lost their medicinal power because they've been sitting there, and they might, you know, I know people who've had the same spices for 10 years because they don't use that much of it, and it will still flavor your food to a certain extent, but you need to buy your spices fresh and in really small amounts so that you can continue to rotate them and keep them fresh. Because it's like when you use black pepper. There's a lot of really good benefits in black pepper. It contains an alkaloid called piperine. And basically, this is why, you know, a lot of people will have peppercorns in a pepper grinder, and they'll grind their pepper fresh on their food because you're releasing you're releasing all of the properties. So same with like cloves. You know, cloves have powerful anti-parasitic properties, but once they've been ground up into powder, they oxidize pretty quickly, and they'll still make your food taste good, but they're not going to have the benefits medicinally that they would if they were fresh. So like, keep a plant on your counter, of a basil plant. You know, you can get them in the grocery stores. That's a really good place to start, where you're just picking the fresh leaves off a plant that sits in your kitchen window. You can even have it during the winter. So to me, that's a super easy place for people to start, is with their own spices and what they use to cook with. And then the second thing is fall in love with tea, herbal teas, because there's a lot of power in like a cup of peppermint tea before you go to bed. It's good for digestion. It's good for calming. It tastes good. It can promote a good night's sleep. And then dandelion root tea is really good for your liver, and it tastes so good. And there's all kinds of teas that you can start experimenting with. And it's not that they're benign, but they're super easy to start with. So you don't have to think too hard when you have a cup of holy basil tea. And holy basil is a beautiful adaptogen. It's great for your immune system. It tastes amazing if you've ever had a cup of holy basil tea. So that to me is the very best place for people to start, is your spices in your kitchen and the teas. Start adding more tea into your routine.
Yeah. So speaking of holy basil, there was a temple in Egypt I visited that had fresh bushes of basil.
Oh,
And you just mentioned that, and I went right back to that moment where my friend picked it off and gave it to me, and I put it in my mouth. And also, interesting enough, another vendor, you know how there are vendors there, they try to sell you all their wares. He gave me some as a gift.
yeah, there's a lot of deep, rich tradition to herbs and ones like holy basil. It's also known as tulsi.
Mhm.
And it's just the smell of it. If you've never smelled fresh basil, holy basil, it's different than the basil that usually you'd put on a caprese salad or in with your sauce. But yeah, that's awesome.
Yeah. So if you have a herbal tea, those are dried, so they still have a medicinal value to it.
They do, but and you know, I know a lot of people who dry their teas themselves, like mullein. Fresh, you can make mullein tea out of the leaves quite easily, fresh leaves, and you can make holy basil. I know people who have their own holy basil plants, or like so many things. So you can very easily pick a bunch of leaves. Like I have spearmint that grows in my garden. I have a lot of stuff that I grow, and I'll just go pick a small handful of fresh spearmint leaves and steep them in a cup and strain the leaves off and have a fresh cup of tea. But you can also dry your herbs. So I dry spearmint because spearmint is just like explodes everywhere.
Mhm.
And I'll dry a bunch of leaves that will last me throughout all winter. So yes, there are still a lot of beautiful, highly beneficial medicinal properties to dried herbs as well. But you need to store them properly, keep them in an airtight, container, and then use them throughout the year. If you keep them for years and years, eventually they'll oxidize and lose their power.
Yeah, so right now I have a rosemary bush that decided to explode.
Oh, nice.
And I need some ideas on what to do with it.
Well, you could make rosemary tea. You could put rosemary, you can make rosemary salt. Like you could get a bunch of Himalayan sea salt. And one of my favorite recipes is to take the get some rosemary little needles. I don't really wash my stuff because I don't spray anything. So I would just find a bunch of rosemary needles, grate some fresh lemon zest, and let the lemon zest dry out so there's no moisture in it. Then mix the fresh rosemary, the fresh lemon zest that's been dried, and mix it to some pink Himalayan sea salt, because you can get that in bulk.
Mhm.
And then you have this amazing rosemary lemon zest salt that the salt helps preserve the lemon and the rosemary, and super good. And just cook with it. Add it to your roast beef or add it to your zucchini, and make a rosemary tea. I have a rosemary bush that we take in the summer or in the winter. We just moved it in because I live in Utah where it gets really cold, and it's inside now, and it's extremely happy. So growing a lot. So we'll pick off some. I'll just cut off a twig of it, and I'll steep it in a cup of. I'll just steep it and make a cup of rosemary tea. So just use it a lot and share it.
Yeah,
Just say, hey,
I know. I'm just going to start giving it away.
There you go. There you go. And that little salt recipe, honestly, makes the best Christmas gifts. People love that.
Good idea. Is
Yeah.
that a recipe in the book?
It's not. Rosemary is in the book, but that one is just super easy. You can put as much rosemary and lemon zest as you want. Maybe start not too heavy at first, because it really flavors up your salt. So
yeah, good idea. I love making gifts for Christmas.
Nice. And it's easy to get the the little glass jars with the, the cap you press on that's like a salt shaker cap, and then with another cap that screws on top.
Oh
Those
yeah,
are
you could get those at the dollar store.
exactly. You can get them everywhere. Yeah.
I don't know what else to ask you because there's so much, but definitely if you're listening, check out her book, Be Your Own Shaman. And she means plant medicine shaman, since there's different shamans actually.
Yeah.
I don't practice herbal shamanism, but I practice more of a spiritual shamanism. But yeah, you have any other closing words for us? Any wisdom you want to share?
Well, I know you were curious about the title of my book, right?
Right. Let's talk about that. Be
Yeah.
Your Own Shaman.
Yeah. So when I was done gathering all of the information, how this book came to be is when I was in high school, my dad wrote a book called From the Shepherd's Purse, and it had 48 plants. It was kind of a little bit the same kind of format where there's a full color picture of the plant because you want to be able to identify it properly. It's illustrated picture, a list of, the Latin name, the common name, what it's good for, and then how to prepare it into like a tincture, a tea, a decoction, a poultice, whatever. And then, so that was when I was in high school. And I've had people ask me for decades, we'd love, you need to republish your dad's book, because my dad self-published his book 45 years ago. So that never felt right to me and my siblings. So I took his 48 plants, I updated all of the pictures and all of the, the illustrations, and then I doubled the content. And so the book that I sent you, it has 94 plants, but then it got picked up by a publisher this year, and it now has 101 plants, which include a chapter of psychedelic and sacred plants. So the book kind of came about because I needed to bring back my dad's book, and I wanted to add on to it. So when it was almost done, I wanted to call it something like Be Your Own Healer, Be Your Own Doctor. And I had a whole list of names as I was brainstorming. And then my Native American brother, him and his two siblings are full-blooded Eastern Shoshone. And they have all really embraced their Native American roots. And it's the way that they have walked through life with what they got from my parents as their adopted parents, and then the tradition from their Eastern Shoshone family has been really, it gives me chills just thinking about it. But my Native American brother, his name is Bert, he said, why don't you say Be Your Own Shaman? And I was like, oh, it just landed, and it was coming from someone who, this is the rich history of his biological heritage. And I just thought, and then he said, because you're supposed to be the white woman bridge between the Native Americans and all the white people who can use this information too. I'm like, okay. So that's how the book got its title. I've had a couple of people be a little bit offended by it because they feel like shamanism is witchcraft and demonic. And I'm like, well, this is not the intention. And shaman means healer as well. And yeah, so that's how the book got its title.
Yeah, it's almost like he gave you the blessing, like okay, as a representative of his culture and his bloodlines.
Yeah.
Said, just do this.
Yeah. Well, and I think natural healing and herbal medicine and the beautiful wisdom of shamanism around everyone who practices the different modalities of shamanism is not just for one person or one culture. Cultures are meant to be shared and it's what makes us a cohesive society. It's what makes us, when I share what I know with someone, it enriches all of us. So.
And exactly. And that's how we learn too, because honestly, we always serve as messengers for each other.
We do.
Sometimes we say things or I say things and I don't know where they came from, but that was something that somebody needed to hear out there, or the person I was talking to needed to hear it.
I love that. You get
Yeah,
that's divine guidance right there, right?
exactly. Have any knowledge about blue lotus?
I don't have deep knowledge about it. I know about it. I've done 2 facilitated plant medicine journeys. And during the first one, I the facilitator used a little bit of blue lotus at the beginning,
Hmm.
but I don't have a lot of deep experience with it. No.
Well, I'm the kind of person that buys some and starts
Nice.
putting it on, but it can be, I guess, hallucinogenic. A
That's what
li-
yeah.
yeah, and you're gonna laugh. Like it doesn't affect me. Like I don't, it just smells amazing.
Oh,
And
I'll have to
I said
try
to
it.
my husband, I said, smell this. And he's like, I feel a little funny after.
Yeah, well, I really love the resurgence of psychedelics and sacred plants because to me, these were put on the earth to help human beings heal trauma, connect with their higher self, and um, this is what's been missing for a long time. But there needs to be proper facilitation and integration. You can't just have a powerful plant medicine experience and then not then go blow up your life because you've had all these realizations. I mean, you could do that, but to me it's like let's go, let's have someone help integrate after we've had all these big epiphanies. And no, but I love that about blue lotus. I don't have a lot of experience with it.
I should have warned him. But I loved it, but I don't always react the same
Yeah,
to,
everyone's
or
different.
everyone's different. So I was like, just wow, this smells amazing. Sniff it all day, maybe.
You're just in a higher consciousness automatically, so you're just like, this is my natural state. Woohoo!
Ooh, this is normal. Yes.
I
Yeah.
love that. Okay, Tina, that I like that about you.
Now you know a lot about me.
I think I only know a little bit about you.
So, I got stung by a wasp on
Mm.
Thursday on my hand, and
Oh, ow.
God, it hurt. It felt like someone cut me with a knife.
Yeah, that's painful.
Seriously.
Yeah.
What would be a remedy for like a sting from a wasp or a bee? What would you go to?
Well, my go-to is always lomatium tincture. So it's just a concentrated, we use 190 proof when we do our extractions. And we do have some reduced alcohol, but the majority of our tinctures are all alcohol based. We don't dilute them or sweeten them. So we always suggest people can dilute them when they take them. Just get a little bit of water, put your tincture in, drink it up. But with a bee sting or a wasp sting or even a spider bite or something like that, just take the tincture, and if you get stung like right on your hand, just put a drop of the tincture straight, just a couple drops,
Mm-hmm.
and it will take the sting away very quickly. So that's what I've always used on my kids and my grandkids and family members. I take a little bottle of it when I go hiking. So just for whatever.
Bug bites.
Bug bites and bee stings. I've had a yellow jacket fly down my shirt when I was hiking. And I mean, it landed on me and then it crawled down my shirt and it stung me on the back. And
Oh no.
it was very painful, but I had my lomatium tincture and I had my friend just put some right on it, and it made a huge difference.
Yeah, well, you know me. I went online, started Googling natural remedies.
Yeah,
I put like honey on it.
yeah,
I put
that's good
baking
too.
soda paste on it. Yeah, I was trying everything. I think the baking soda paste actually helped.
Yeah, that's good. That's very good too. When you ask me that question, I always have to remember, well, what could someone use that they would actually have?
Right.
And most people wouldn't have a lomatium tincture, but yeah, baking soda is amazing. A little bit of coconut oil, a little bit of honey.
Mm-hmm. And so what is lomatium? Because I'm not familiar with that herb. Can you talk about that?
Yeah, so lomatium it's a Native American plant. It only grows in one part of the world, which is the Pacific Northwest of the United States. So Washington, Oregon, Northern California, Nevada, parts of Idaho, parts of Utah, a little bit of like Montana and Wyoming. So just kind of up in that area. And it does grow in some parts of Canada, kind of up where Washington is. But lomatium was used. So the Spanish flu of 1917, 1918, that big pandemic, everyone was aware of. What the United States government did is they assigned a contract physician to every group, an area all around the United States, so they could keep track of stats, like how many people got infected and how many people died. And there's a medical doctor in San Francisco. His name was E.T. Krebs Sr., and he was assigned a group area that not only included San Francisco, but it included 2 Native American tribes from the Washoe Indians that were living near Carson City, Nevada. And as he was going through the pandemic and gathering stats and visiting the different areas that were in his region, he discovered that these 2 Native American tribes, that while they got infected and they had high levels of infection, not one person from these tribes died during the epidemic, which was really, really rare because people from all groups everywhere died. And there's little tiny pockets that didn't. But what he discovered is that they were using lomatium. And so after the pandemic was over, he took lomatium back to his practice in San Francisco and he started studying it. And it started getting a bunch of, they were doing like really extensive studies on it. And then in I think it was 1944, I might be a couple years off, when penicillin was discovered. And there had been write-ups in medical journals, and I still have some of these. My dad had collected a bunch of these journals and articles. But in 1944, I believe, when penicillin was discovered, all of a sudden nobody wanted to use an old Indian remedy because it was like, oh, that's old. We've got this shiny new antibiotic. And so it kind of got left by the wayside. And then Dr. Krebs, his son, E.T. Krebs Jr., went on to become a medical doctor as well. And my dad worked with him for about 30 years and spent 30 years studying this plant lomatium. It's what's known as a broad spectrum antimicrobial. So think about what's a microbe: virus, fungus, yeast, bacteria. It doesn't appear to disturb any beneficial bacteria. So it's just a powerful antimicrobial. It does cause a one-time detox rash in some people when they take it for the first time. And, that's something I have decades worth of information that I share with people about that. But yeah, it's a powerful, powerful antiviral. So when COVID hit in 2020, I was just kind of like, okay.
That's what you used.
That's what I used.
And
it was easy peasy.
Well, I think it's interesting that I've never heard of it.
Yeah. Well, I think it's because you can't cultivate it. You can't take the seeds and grow it in a hothouse or in fields or, my dad tried for 30 years to cultivate it. He ended up buying a really large piece of property in Idaho and where it grows. So.
And that's where you source your lomatium? Great.
Yeah. So it's a beautiful plant. Once when they learn about it, it's kind of like, okay, this is a powerhouse to have in my arsenal. It's safe for kids and babies. I gave it to my oldest, who's 43 now, when he was like 6 weeks old, when he got a little bit congested. So it was, yeah. So it's super safe. It's I gave him the tincture. In a little bit of water, I got a teaspoon full of water and I put 2 or 3 drops of the tincture. I got a clean dropper and squeezed up the water from the teaspoon, just put it in the side of his cheek. This is how all my brothers and sisters and I were. This is what we did. So there was not even a hesitation of, I felt nervous about that. I'm like, yeah, this boy's congested. Let's get him some lomatium. So very empowering for sure.
Yeah, it sounds like I want it in my collection too. So is this a tincture that you sell on your website?
Yeah, we call it LDM 100 because the LDM stands for the full name, which is Lomatium dissectum, and then the variation is multifida. So there's actually 13 different species of Lomatium. But this is the one that has the power, the antimicrobial is Lomatium dissectum, and the variation is multifida. So we name it LDM. That's what we name it.
Great. So can you tell people a little bit about where they can get your book, where they can find your herbal tinctures at your family sells, and all those details?
Yeah, so my book it has 101 plants. So the one I sent you the self-published book, which is going to be a collector's item, I believe, because I only printed a certain number of copies last year. And then the new one came out with the publisher, and you can get it on Amazon or Barnes & Noble right on the website. And you can find me on YouTube. I have a little YouTube channel called Barlow Herbal, and my website is barlowherbal.com. So super easy.
Thank you, Jane, for coming on the show, talking about your wisdom and your father's wisdom, and let's hope that this takes off, which I know it will.
Thanks, Tina. Yeah, I appreciate. Yes. I think to me, it's the perfect time to be in a position, like even with what you do, like people are really searching because they know there's something broken out there, right?
Yeah. So. And that's the whole focus of this podcast is what's been suggested to us or recommended to us has not worked or is not working very well, and to provide other options for people out there.
Yeah, 100%. Well, thank you for having me on, and it's nice to now have a new like-minded friend.
Yes, thank you so much, Jane.
Thanks, Tina. Have a great day.